What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about your circle of control, the things that you have control over, which are probably things that you don't think you have control over, or at least you think you have less control over them than what you do. We tend to think that we have more control over the things that we have less control over than the other way around, meaning we want to have control over outside circumstances more than what we do. We want to be able to control them more than what we actually do. We want to be able to control the outcomes we have in our life, whether or not we achieve our goal, the people around us, the circumstances that we're confronted with. We want to be able to control those things more than what we can. We have influence over those things. We have influence, but we don't have ultimate control over those things. For example, we don't have ultimate control on whether or not we lose 20 pounds. If 20 pounds is a goal that we have, we don't have ultimate control on whether or not we lose it, but we have influence on whether or not we lose it. We have influence on whether or not we achieve that goal. A person, we don't have control over a person. If we're a spouse and we're trying to control our spouse and get them to do what we want them to do through forcible means, we don't have control over that. We have no control over it, but we have influence over it. We have influence on our spouse. We have influence on our work relationships and on our friendship relationships. We have influence over them. In a business, we don't have control on whether or not people come to the business, if people buy from you. We don't have control over that. We don't have ultimate control. We have influence over it. Understanding the difference between the two is very important, and not understanding, or at least not accepting the difference between the two, is a big reason why so many people quit, why so many people close businesses too soon, why so many people quit relationships too soon, why so many people, which is ironic because I've closed a business and ended a relationship all within the last 6 months. They were both 10 years long. I'll let you decide whether or not that's too soon, but nonetheless, those are real examples, and I'm willing to accept that I've made those decisions. Again, I'll let you decide on whether or not 10 years is too soon or not. And that's why so many people quit on their health and fitness journeys too soon, because they don't understand the difference between influence and control. They think that they have control over it, but what they really have is influence over it. What they really have is the ability to dictate whether or not you move toward it or not. You don't technically have control on if you achieve it, but you have a significant influence on whether or not that happens. And typically speaking, when it comes to goals, especially, if you're willing to do it long enough, and if you're willing to change things often enough, you'll get the goal. Typically speaking, if you're willing to do it long enough and you're willing to change things whenever they need to be changed, you will get the goal. And that's why I say people aren't willing to do things long enough in order to let them happen, in order to let them come to fruition. So, influence and control, it's important to understand the difference between those two things. Within your circle of control are only four things. Four things, four things only within that circle of control. Now, of course, within those four things, there are many things, many subcategories, if you will, within the four things. But there are only four basic categories of things that you have control over. It is what you do, what you say, what you think, and what you feel. Do, say, think, feel. Those are the four things that you have control over. Let's break them down real quick so that we understand what they mean. What we do, that makes sense. That means literally the actions that you take. If you go exercise, if you grab a handful of Skittles, if you pull into Starbucks drive-through on your way to work and get that Frappuccino, whatever, 1,200 calorie nonsense. Do the actions that you do, what you say, the words that come out of your mouth. You have control over them, whether or not you believe you do. You have control over the things that come out of your mouth, the things that you say. If I tell somebody that I'm disappointed in them, if I yell at somebody unreasonably because they've hurt my feelings or they've touched my ego, if I give somebody a compliment, like the things that I say, the things that come out of my mouth, those things make perfect sense. What you do and what you say, most of us can understand that we have control over those things. Again, the say part, some people, well, I can't control what comes out of my mouth. Of course, you have control over it. You have ultimate control over it. So those things we understand. The other two, yes, there is some gray area in what you think and what you feel. So let's define them, and then we'll talk about the gray area. When it comes to what you think and what you feel, what you think are literally the thoughts that go through your head, the thoughts that happen throughout the day, the thoughts that happen whenever you're confronted with something, the thoughts that happen whenever you're doing your work, the thoughts that happen when you're having a conversation with somebody. That's what you think. What you feel is what you feel. The feelings that you have, about a person, the feelings you have about a situation, the feelings that you have about going to work out, that's what you feel. So we understand what those are. But like I said, there's some gray area. Why is there gray area in what we think and what we feel? Because, of course, there are thoughts and feelings that pop up without us being able to control them. Unconscious thoughts and feelings that will automatically pop up. Automatic thoughts, automatic feelings. They'll just automatically pop up or automatically go away. A perfect example of that is motivation. One of the things that kills so many health and fitness journeys is this idea of motivation and the belief that motivation is the thing that you need in order to keep going. Well, I'm just not motivated right now, so I'm going to take some time off. Well, I'm not motivated today because it's been a long day at work, and so I'm not going to go work out. Those kinds of ideas and beliefs have killed many a health and fitness journey. But motivation is just a feeling. Hence, I don't feel motivated today. So if motivation is just a feeling, the question is, can you control whether or not it's there? Well, to an extent you can, but let's say you can't. And if you can't, then what can you do about it? So the gray area in feeling, for instance, is what you do with the feeling. So if you're not feeling motivated, the gray area in that is, what do you decide to do about that? Most people decide to not follow through with their word, not follow through with what they said they were going to do, and instead stop or quit or skip for today or wait until Monday or wait until next month or wait until next year. That's what most people do. So when it comes to feelings, the question is, what do you do with the feelings that pop up? Yes, you don't have control over all of the feelings that you have, but you have control over what you do with them. You have control over what comes next, what you do or what you say about them. You have control on whether or not you let them pull you around. You have control on whether or not you push them down. Neither one of those things, by the way, is very effective. So you have control on what you do next when it comes to feelings, when it comes to thoughts, when it comes to what you think, automatic thoughts, especially, you have control over what happens next or what you do with the thought. For instance, automatic negative thoughts or ants, that's a real thing. Automatic negative thoughts. The average person has some dumb amount, 10,000 thoughts a day. And of those, 70%, I forget the exact amount, but it's over 50% are negative. Automatic negative thoughts. The problem is most people think that that's just them. It's some circuitry issue that they have going on, and they're just a negative person, and things just aren't going to work out because they have these negative thoughts about whatever the situation is, or whatever the journey is, the business, how that's going. Because they have these negative thoughts, that's the way things actually are. But they're just automatic thoughts. They're just things that are popping into your head. They're just things that are there, and they're just swirling around. So again, the question is, what do you do with the thing? What do you do with the thought when it pops up? And that's where you have control. You have control over what happens next. When I have an automatic negative thought pop up, then what do I actually do with it? Where do I go with this thing? So what we do, what we say, what we think, and what we feel, those are the things that we have control over. Like I said, think and feel a little more gray. Do and say, we understand. The problem with do and say is that we let what we think and what we feel dictate what we do and what we say. That's how the people that say, oh, I can't control what I say. Well, of course you can, but you're letting how you feel dictate what you say. You're reacting to how you feel instead of responding. You're letting your emotions control you instead of you controlling them. And that's the disconnect. That's where we're not seeing things. That's what we're not understanding, is that you can control what you do and what you say whenever you have these things automatically come to your head, automatically start to think a way, automatically start to feel a certain way. When those things creep up and they come in, you can decide what to do next. You can decide what to do next. It's hard because what we think and what we feel is inside of us. And so we think that it's us. Like I said, we think that it is just who we are. What we do and what we say, we know that impacts our external world. We can see that it impacts our external world, and we can see potentially that it impacts our body. If I go work out and I go resistance train and I do it regularly, I can see my body change and shift. I can see that happen. I can see my body change and become a different thing. However, if I start to think differently, I don't see anything outside of me necessarily happen, meaning my body doesn't start to change, things around me don't move. That doesn't go on. So we tend to view what we think and what we feel as us, as the self, as who we are, instead of understand that they're in there, our thoughts and our feelings are there, but a lot of them are just happening. They're just happening just randomly or arbitrarily. Maybe it's an actual signal to do something different. And a lot of times it is, which is why I said pushing things down is not beneficial either. But a lot of times it's just a thing that's coming to your head, just a negative thought that just happens to pop up, or a feeling that, I don't know, just like pops up out of nowhere. Those things, that's normal. It happens. Every human being happens to every human being, to everybody. Some people just cover it up better than others. I, for one, am a person that, quote, covers it up better than most people. This is a big reason why a lot of people around me had a hard time understanding me whenever I was going through the divorce and closing the business, because I didn't look outwardly as if it was impacting me, which is a lot my downfall. And people didn't understand that. People don't like things that they don't get. And they didn't understand why it looked from the outside looking in that I wasn't being impacted. So that's a perfect example of how you can take thoughts and feelings, and even though there's a bunch jumbled in there, I'm the kind of person who can take those things and I can settle them down and I can outwardly look calm. Whereas there's somebody also on the other end of the spectrum that all of those thoughts and feelings, they're super tense about them, and they just let things spew out of their mouth, and they let their actions be dictated by those thoughts and feelings drastically. So what you do with your thoughts and with your thoughts and feelings is the most important part. So how do you start to gain control over the thoughts and the feelings? Because like I said, that generally is what will dictate what you do and what you say. You can do something and say something and change your thought or your feeling. You can do that. Going back to motivation, most people let the lack of motivation or the feeling of motivation keep them from exercising. But if you don't feel motivated and you go exercise, and 10 minutes into the workout, suddenly you feel motivated, you've created motivation. You've created that energy inside of you. So you can do something to also create thoughts and feelings. You can say things to also create thoughts and feelings. But most of us let our thoughts and feelings dictate what we do and what we say. So how do we start to make sure that we're not being drug around by these automatic negative thoughts or these feelings that just come or go, or they're not here or they are here? How do we start to create a gap so that we can start to choose wisely, more wisely, what we're going to do with our life, what we're going to do with the next moment, what we're going to say to the person whenever we talk to them or whenever we confront them, instead of, like I said, letting our thoughts, feelings dictate what's going to happen. So one of the most important things and one of the most important ideas is space, a gap in between what you do or what you say whenever you have a thought or a feeling, especially one that just feels random. Somehow creating space between the next action or the next thing that comes out of your mouth. This takes practice and it takes awareness. But when you have the space, when there's space between your thought or your feeling and your action or what you say, when you create that space, then you have a much higher likelihood of having a more positive outcome, something that's actually going to impact you and empower you instead of drag you back, instead of move you back to safety. Because when that space is small or non-existent, and we have a thought or a feeling and we react instead of respond, most of us end up in a bad place. 9 times out of 10, you end up back where you started. And I believe most people want to improve. That's why so many people start New Year's resolutions. That if you want to improve, then you have to figure out how to create that gap so that you can move forward, so that you can go into growth, step into growth instead of continuing to move back into safety. So finding that space, finding the gap between the automatic thought or feeling that's happening, or maybe it's a real thought or feeling that's happening, and what you do or what you say next, what happens next. In that gap, it's important to ask a couple questions. Number one, is this true or is this real? The thought, for instance, if you have an automatic negative thought, it pops into your head. You create space between that and the action, and you say, is this true? Is this thought true? Or is this thought real? You might figure out that it's not real. You might figure out that it's just a thought that just popped up into your head. A feeling, the same thing. Motivation, lack of motivation. We'll use that. If you have that lack of motivation and you're going to work out and you go to react and you say, well, I'm just not going to work out. If you create the space and you think, well, is this true? Is it true that I don't have motivation? Yes. Okay. That's helpful. Then we go to the next question. Does it serve me? Does it serve me? When you have no lack of motivation and it is real, no, I don't have motivation. Does it serve me to not have motivation and to skip this workout? The answer is always no. That means go do the workout anyway. So that sequence of questions is very important. Is this true? And then does it serve me? And when you think through these things, then you can start to put more things into action, slowly start to take more steps forward, slowly start to gain more momentum, slowly start to get traction in your life. And as you gain traction and as you do this more often, you become a different person. As you become a different person, it becomes easier and your problems become bigger instead of tiny, small ones. Instead of you worrying about the minutia, you start to worry about and think about and be concerned about the next big step, which is the point of life. Your worries and your concerns and problems, those like problems don't go away. No matter if you are the richest person on earth or the poorest person on earth, everywhere in between, everyone has problems. Everyone, everywhere. The question is, what level of problem do you want to deal with? Do you want to deal with a small level of problem, which is where most people deal with, or do you want to deal with a high level problem? That's up to you. And when you start to gain traction, instead of letting your thoughts and feelings drag you around, then you can actually start to move up and deal with higher level problems and overcome higher level problems. And that's how you can start to gain influence over your circle of control. That's how you can start to control that circle and influence the things around you. Like we said in the beginning, everything outside of you, you have no control over it, but you have influence on it. And understanding what you do, what you say, what you think, and what you feel, how you influence those things, how you control those things, that's what's going to dictate how it influences everything outside of you. You start to understand that, that's when you start to get real change in your life. So that's what we're after, friends. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you have not already, you can go wherever you are, Spotify, Apple. Make sure you hit that follow button. Share this with your friends so that they can get the good news too. And until next time, make sure you go out and you win today.